All right, shalom, friends. Rob Vanhoff here with Rob on the Rock. I want to talk a little bit about the opening of the book of Leviticus. That is Leviticus chapter 1. We're going to look at just verses 1 through 3, and then a couple other verses from Exodus that we'll compare. And so, again, we're starting the book of Leviticus, Parashat Vayyikra, and he called. It's the first, I think, about five chapters of the book of Leviticus here. But we're just going to look at Leviticus 1, verses 1 through 3 here. And then I'm going to do another video on the Tell Us Torah YouTube channel if you're interested. And you can see there, I'm planning to do just a short bit on the beginning of chapter 2 of Leviticus. So it'll still be for this week's Torah portion. Well, it begins here, Vayyikra. Vayyikra means, and he called. Vayyikra el Moshe. So we're not told who the subject is. It just says, and he called to Moses. Well, we have to remember the end of Exodus was the setting up of the Mishkan, of the Mikdash, the tabernacle, the sanctuary, and that the glory of the Lord filled it. And it's up for business, it's open for operation, you could say. And here it says, Vayyikra el Moshe, and he called to Moses. So we know it's the Lord. And it continues, Vaydaber Adonai elav, and the Lord spoke to him. So he called him first, called Moses, and then the Lord spoke to him. And then it says, Me'ohel moed, from the tent of meeting. And that'll come in important later. Here, for those who know Hebrew, the meh here, you see the mem with the tsere. That's from, min. But as you know, the particle from, or min, can attach to a noun. And normally it would be a chirik with a dagesh, but for those who've done some Hebrew, you know that the aleph does not take the dagesh here, it rejects it, and we have what they call a compensatory lengthening to the tsere, meh. So it's not part of the word. It's Ohel Moed is the name. Ohel Moed is the tent of meeting, tent of witness, something like that. So it says the Lord called him, Vaydaber Adonai elav me'ohel moed, lemor, saying, that takes us to verse 2, Daber el bnei Yisrael. That's now an imperative, daber. It's the same action that the Lord is taking towards Moses, Vaydaber, here, and he spoke. So the Lord speaking to Moses, and in speaking to Moses, his first words is daber. You Moses, speak. So it's a command. Speak, el bnei Yisrael. So Moses knows that he's the one who's supposed to speak, and he knows to whom he will be speaking, to the children of Israel. Ve'amarta alehem, and you will say to them, quote, and now we have like a little imaginary quote. And the first words that Moses is going to say to Israel is Adam. It's the name Adam, basically. Adam ki yakriv mikem korban la'Adonai, a man who would bring from you all, mikem, a korban unto the Lord. A korban is a word, it can mean a gift, an offering. It's from the root kuf resh bet, which means to draw near. It's to draw close, to bring, to draw close. And here we have a noun, korban, being described here. It says, Adam ki yakriv mekem korban la'Adonai. So the first message that goes out once the tabernacle is erected, that God himself tells Moses, speaking to him from the tent of meeting, a man, or Adam, a person who would bring an offering for the Lord, a gift for the Lord. a means of drawing near to the Lord. Remember, the primary purpose of the tabernacle, if we think all the way back to Exodus 25, Parashat Terumah, is that he says that I will dwell in their midst, to be close. And so the tabernacle now is open for operation, open for business, so to speak. And what's that business? That business is Israel worshiping the God of their God. That's what it is, worship. And they can bring, as it says here, a korban, a gift unto the Lord. And it goes on to say, min ha-behema. That means from livestock. It says, min ha-bakar umin hatzon. So it could be from the herd or from the flock. Now we see min again. We see it mikem, from you all. Again, just like we saw, little Hebrew here, me ohel moed, that's from, but it has a tsere because the dagesh, which would be the assimilated nun, is rejected by the aleph. But here in verse 2, mikem. So that's from, you see the hirik that we'd normally expect, plus a dagesh. So that dagesh there in kem is not a dagesh kal. That's not, even though kaf is a begad kafat letter, this is a dagesh chazak. This is a dagesh chazak. This is the nun of min assimilated into that next consonant, doubling the consonant. So we call that dagesh a dagesh chazak. Mikem, korban ladonai. And here, the word korban, we know here, this is kametz katan. We have an unaccented syllable, a closed unaccented syllable, so kor, and then ban. So that bet is a dagesh kal, because we have a bagad kafat letter opening a syllable there. Korban ladonai. And then we have our from as an independent particle. Min ha-behema, right? So from among the livestock. Min ha-bakar, from the herd. U, and, or min hatzon, from the flock. Takrivu. So takrivu is you all shall bring et korbanchem. Korbanchem, your korbans. Your korban, your gift. So God is giving the menu of what is acceptable. So this is an important principle of the Torah, is that God defines what is acceptable worship. Humans don't define that. Acceptable worship is communicated by divine revelation, not the invention of man. Worship that is of the invention of man is an abomination. It's idolatrous. We just saw it a few weeks ago with Parashat Kitisa, the egel, what do they call it? The golden calf. How that was man-made religion. And we're going to see later in Leviticus, Aharon's oldest sons bring strange fire before the Lord, and they die instantly. So what do we learn from this? God communicates what worship is acceptable, because he's not going to change. He just also, likewise, he defined what the materials would be of the tabernacle, what the design would be, how it would be built, etc., the spatial layout, everything. He defined it. And he selected Betzalel and Aholiav. He selected Aharon to be the high priest. All these things. He chose Moses, right? So it's his design. And so those that would presume to draw near, but not in spirit and truth, not according to what God has revealed as acceptable worship, their worship is an abomination. So he defines, but the drawing near is the beautiful part we don't want to forget. He's not far off. He's close. Verse 3. Im olah korbano, if his korban, his gift, is an olah, and this is that word whole, they sometimes call it a whole burnt offering. It's just a feminine participle, olah. It goes up. The idea is that it's completely consumed, except for the hide. The priest that slaughters it can keep the hide. We don't learn that in Leviticus 1. We learn that later. But the offerer, the one who brings this animal, they leave with no material benefit. It is a complete gift unto the Lord. Im olah korbano min habakar, from the herd, zachar tamim, a male tamim without blemish. Yakrivenu, he shall bring. El petach ohel moed, to the door of the tent of meeting. Yakrivoto, he will bring it. Lirtzono lifnei Adonai, for his acceptance. I read this as for his acceptance before the Lord. And I see this as referring to the offerer, for the offerer's acceptance. Ratzon is the word in its absolute form, ratzon. Of course, that opening vowel, that kametz, ratzon, reduces to the shava when we have a construct form, ritzon o. Lirzon o, for his acceptance before the Lord. This has to do with the Mishkan being the place where the God of Israel dwells in the midst of his people. He wants to dwell among them in a very mysterious way. He does not compromise his holiness in order to dwell among his people. Also, the world outside still remains a world of sin and death. So the sin and death on the one hand in the world, and this divinely designed portable dwelling place for the holiness, the uncompromised holiness and glory of the Creator, are in a really, really powerful and mysterious tension. They're existing together in a very powerful potential difference here. And of course, we have controlled shedding of blood all the time, morning and evening, with the lamb every day in the morning, and another lamb every morning or every evening, so on and so forth, and all the commandments that the priests and Levites have to fulfill in their duties. But when it comes to Leviticus 1, these are not the obligatory burnt offerings that you see for the what they call the tamid, the daily burnt offering, or the extra ones for the new moon or the Shabbats or the feast days. No, this is an individual who will approach and be recognized as an individual. They'll be recognized as an individual before the God of Israel. Yes, they're Bnei Israel, they're children of Israel, but they are recognized as an individual in this act of worship. And it says it's worship that is acceptable before him. And so there's a lot more that can be said about that, and you can dive into the Torah portion and read all about that. But to wrap up, I just wanted to look at two other places, because I wanted to talk a little bit about how this preposition from is used, and I'll go back just to those who've done a little bit of Hebrew. Vayyikra el Moshe, vaydaber Adonai elav me ohel moed. from, so it's from the tent of meeting. And then we saw Adam ki akriv mikem, so from you all. And then we saw three mins, independent. Min habehema, from livestock. Min habakar, umin hatzon, so from the herd or from the flock. And then it says his korban would be min habakar, so that is from the herd, etc. But also, that was the last one there. Now back to the from at the very beginning. Vaydaber Adonai elav me ohel moed. This is the first time we see God calling to Moses, or rather speaking to Moses from. So he's speaking to Moses from the Mishkan. And we know this earlier because God says, that's where I'm going to speak to you, from between the above the ark, above the Aron. Here it says he's speaking to Moses from this location. So from here indicates where God's voice is coming from. And I have two other verses that use from that I wanted to contrast. One is both from Exodus 20, verse 22. This is right after the 10 words. It says, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, and the Lord said to Moses, Ko tomar el bnei Israel. Thus you will say to the children of Israel, Atem ritem, you all have seen, ki min hashamayim dibarti imachem. Did you catch that? For you all have seen, ki min hashamayim, from the heavens, dibarti imachem. From the heavens I have spoken to you all. So we have the same verb, ledaber, to speak, the same subject, yod-heh-vav-heh, and a preposition, from, being to speak from. That means the voice is coming from. Well, after the 10 words, the Lord's words himself says that he says, from the heavens I spoke with you all. So do you see the shift then? We can appreciate that before the Mishkan, that is at the 10 words at Mount Sinai, he's speaking min hashamayim. Min hashamayim, to Israel. The beginning of Leviticus 1:1, we see Vaydaber Adonai elav me ohel moed, from the tent of meeting. Now, is God in a different place? Did God change places? Did he move? Well, we're going to look at one more verse from Exodus 24. This is part of the same Torah portion. Actually, Exodus 20 is the end of Yitro, and Exodus 21 begins Mishpatim, and this is part of Mishpatim. Vayishkon kavod Adonai al har Sinai, and the glory of the Lord, this is shakan. This is where we get the word mishkan, tabernacle. So you could say, well, here it says settled, but it dwelt, it tabernacled on Mount Sinai. Then it says, Vaychasehu, and it covered it. What did? He'anan. The cloud covered it. That is Mount Sinai. Sheshet yamim, 6 days. Vayyikra el Moshe, that's just like our opening for Leviticus. Vayyikra el Moshe bayom hashvi'i, on the 7th day, mitok he'anan, from the midst of the cloud. So here we have another God speaking to Moses. Now here he called, not daber, but he spoke or called to Moses from mitok he'anan. So we see, I spoke to you min hashamayim, from heaven. He called to Moses then from the cloud at the top of Mount Sinai, where the glory of the Lord was dwelling. But back to Leviticus 1:1, where's the Kavod Adonai now? The Kavod Adonai in our Torah portion this week is in the tabernacle. It's in the Mishkan. And that is the source. The glory of the Lord is the source of the speech that Moses hears. Moses is not hearing the Lord speak to him min hashamayim, from heaven, in Leviticus 1. He's not hearing Moses is not hearing the Lord speak to him mitoch ha'nan, from the midst of the cloud. Rather, he's hearing him me'ohel moed, from the tent of meeting. And so we see here is a changing location that Moses is associating the presence of God and hearing his voice. So we remember that the tabernacle is set up so that God would have what he wanted, which is to dwell in the midst of his people. And in doing so, he does not compromise his holiness nor his glory. He is, however, approachable, which is wonderful. How is he approachable? Well, Yeshua says he seeks those who would worship in spirit and truth, in spirit and truth. So those are the ones whose worship is acceptable, those who worship in spirit and truth. Spirit means that they are not hypocritical. They're not they don't have a divided heart. They're not. They don't have some agenda or some hidden purpose. They're not hiding. They're not seeking to conceal sin. So that is what it means to worship in spirit. And in truth, it means that they worship according to what God has revealed as true about his character, which is holy and pure and just. And therefore, the person who worships in spirit and truth, they could be sincere, but they can't bring a pig. The sincerity of a worshiper's heart does not make a pig acceptable as worship. It's just not an option. And you couldn't, just in the same way you couldn't bring a camel to worship. You couldn't even, and it's not even a matter of it being unclean, because there are clean animals that are still not candidates for worship. A deer, for example. A deer is a kosher animal in terms of it's acceptable to be. You can hunt a deer and pour out its blood and cook its meat, and that's fine. That's acceptable by the Torah. God says that's fine. However, you can't offer deer. You can't bring a deer to the priest as a burnt offering or as a fellowship offering. Couldn't do it. In the same way that the sons of Aaron can't just bring strange fire. They can't just make up their own religion. The revealed religion is what God says it is. The revealed commandments, the revealed path of worship. He is accessible. There is such thing as acceptable worship by the holy, true, just, kind, loving, long-suffering, gracious Creator. There is acceptable worship. And that acceptable worship is exclusively on his terms. That's an important aspect that we learn here in the Torah portion. All right, friends, I hope this was, something that'll get you thinking and get your ideas flowing for this week's Torah portion.